Greetings, everyone. I hope that you are all having a wonderful day. My name is Tyler Adolfo, and as of today, December 24th, 2025, I can't believe I'm saying this. I am officially 28 years old. This is a long time coming. There were chapters of my life where I thought that I would never make it as far as I have. I thought I would never achieve as much as I did. And granted, I've had difficult moments. I've had my struggles. I've had obstacles that I've had to persist through, but I'm still here. I'm still kicking. I'm still fighting despite my mental illness, despite the challenges that come with mental illness. I'm still fighting along, and I'm grateful to God for that. I'm grateful to still be here today. And I think that the future has a lot of good in store for myself. And I hope the same goes for each and every one of you. I hope that anyone watching this, whether you're here now or you're watching a recording later on, that your holidays have been going well. I know this can be a tumultuous time for some for a myriad of reasons, but I hope that you're doing well yourself, especially mentally upstairs, because it's so important and I cannot stress that enough. I hope that you have a wonderful Christmas. I really hope that you have a happy new year and that this next year, 2026, brings you infinite joy, happiness, and success. Looks like we got someone who joined in here. Hello. No need to talk if you don't want to, but welcome in. It's a profound pleasure to have you here. I was just doing my cordial introduction. I'm 28 years old as of today, and I don't feel quite old, so I guess that's a good thing. Because of my weight, I do feel joint pains at times. I feel fatigue at times. Nonetheless, I'm mentally doing better than I have been in an extremely long time. And I really come so far compared to where I was. I hope that you're doing good, whoever you are that's in here. Appreciate you. I've really evolved in terms of my stability because there was a time not too many years ago I went through the most challenging year of my life, and that was 2022. I had dealt with previously a 6 month long manic episode due to bipolar disorder, during which I experienced psychosis, which is where you lose touch with reality. So I experienced delusions, I experienced hallucinations to an extent. And as a result of those circumstances, I had many consequences. I destroyed relationships with friends. People started to alienate themselves from me and distance themselves from me. And I don't pass judgment on them for that. I can understand their perspective of where they're coming from. It's not my business or place to pass judgment on people who were put in that position. But in addition to destroying relationships, I also got expelled by my university. And we're doing better now, though. I was able to transfer to a new school, and I'm studying communication with a minor in pre law. So hopefully, I'll be able to get into law school soon enough. Beyond the destruction of relationships and being expelled by my university, I also lost jobs. And so being deprived of a source of income was another hardship that came about as a result of mania. And it took me an incredibly long time before I developed the confidence to get back into the workforce. I thought for a period of time, because of the fear, doubt, and shame and embarrassment that I had been dealing with, that I would never get in the workforce again. I thought that I would never work again. There were periods of time where I just didn't want to be around anymore. And it was tough for me to come to peace with my depression. I was very apathetic, but also ambivalent. These are two emotions that I experienced a great deal of. But I was able to persist through these times. And in 2022 is when my depressive episode was at its absolute worst, because this is when I had come out of the mania, I had come out of the psychosis, and I started to recognize the different things that I had done. Let me just close this message. I recognized the different things that I had done and felt very harshly the consequences that those had on me. And so I'm in a position today, though, where, as I mentioned, I'm back in school, I accumulated more work experience in leadership positions specifically. It's unfortunate that I don't have friends in the way that I used to. I have like an online social circle, which includes my YouTube subscribers, which we're at like 1,200 now, which is insane to me. I never thought that my channel would get this big. So it started off as just like a project during COVID, not for school or anything, but just like a little side project to document memories and a way to cope with the boredom of the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns. And look at the evolution of the channel over the years. I went from just documenting memories from high school and college to becoming a reaction channel where I reacted to stand up comedy to then talking about my lived experiences battling mental health challenges, specifically bipolar disorder. And the channel has just had this upward trajectory, even with the switches of content. And I'm very grateful for that. So I digress. My online social circles, despite those, I don't really have friends anymore. I don't have people that I hang out with outside of the internet. So when I go offline, it's really just myself. And I do have my mother, and I'm very proud of how strong my mom is and how hard she's been fighting because she's dealing with a lot of illness. And I won't go into the specific illnesses she has, but she is young. And for her to be dealing with the level of illness that she is at her age, I can't imagine how difficult it is. And I admire her strength a great deal. I genuinely don't think that I would be able to handle it. But, I am her genetic offspring. So maybe I'm being a little hard on myself. Maybe I shouldn't downplay the role of genes here. And someday I'll be in that position. No, let's hope not. Let's hope I'm not in that position myself someday. But I mean, we're all going to die eventually, right? And when that day comes, I hope I'm a fraction as strong as my mother is. I envy and admire her a great deal. So I've come so far to where, compared to where I was just mentioning how I got expelled by my university. I destroyed relationships during mania. I lost jobs during mania. I got expelled by my fraternity. And since then, I've been able to accumulate job experience, specifically leadership management positions. And I've been able to get back into my education. I was able to transfer to a new university, and I've been able to check back in with online relationships, whether it be through my YouTube channel or through, my Call of Duty network that I've been playing with since 2008, which is insane to say. We're going to 2026, and I've been playing with Call of Duty with the same group of guys since 2008. That's 18 years. It's incredible. And one of them, I'm going to mention really quick. His name is Burst. His real name is Noah. He lives 15 minutes away from me, and we still haven't met. How crazy is that? Like, imagine you have like a gaming buddy who you've been like homies with for more than a decade, and you find out they live 15 minutes from you, but you still haven't met. We're going to figure this out next year, and we're going to make this happen. And it should be very interesting. And I do kind of want to vlog the experience. I don't know if that's something that would interest you, but if it is, then please let me know. I'll probably vlog it regardless, just for the purpose of documenting that memory. But being able to meet a friend of 18 years that I've never met before, someone who knows about me more than many of my IRLs, my in real life friends. Well, I don't really have in real life friends anymore, but people that I know in real life, anyhow. We'll call them acquaintances. So I'm just proud of how far I've come. I didn't think I would be in this position today where I was back in university studying communication and pre-law. I never thought I'd be in this position where I'd accumulate job experience. I never thought I'd be in this position where I'd have any form of social relationship again, even if it's just an online relationship. And I have my sanity back. More than anything, I have my sanity back. And that's what I'm most grateful for. It's because I can't emphasize this enough. Losing control of your central command center is a nightmare. It is a terrifying experience. And I dealt with that for 6 months. At the very beginning of the episode, I was hospitalized at this place called Cooley Dickinson. And it began at midnight. I was at Campus Pond at UMass Amherst. I was planning to do a press conference at that time to expose corruption going on around the campus. And thank God nobody actually showed up, because that would have been incredibly embarrassing. But I did make posts on social media, which was incredibly embarrassing. And so lots of people saw these social media posts that I had disseminated online. Here I was at Campus Pond at midnight, and the police showed up. One of my friends was concerned about my well-being and had called the cops ahead of time. So the police showed up, they detained me, not like arrested, but just like, made sure I stay there until the ambulance got there. And the ambulance took me to the hospital, which was the Cooley Dickinson Hospital. And the experience at Cooley Dickinson was rather interesting. There was a downstairs unit where I was held for a few days, and then there was an upstairs unit where I was held for a few days. All in total, I spent 5 days in Cooley Dickinson as a result of this mental health breakdown. And keep in mind, this is just the beginning of my manic episode. Things get a lot more interesting. But this was an opportunity for medical professionals and staff and people of that position of eminence to catch what was going on and get me and provide me with the urgent medical attention that I needed. But there was a failure, and that ultimately did not happen. The conditions of the hospital were quite severe, to put it mildly. Let's just say that's a euphemism for absolutely abysmal here, because in the downstairs unit, for some reason, they continued to give me access to my phone, even though I was in a state of like psychosis and severe mania. And I was posting sporadically to my social media accounts that I had been kidnapped, or that people were out to get me and I had been betrayed and backstabbed. For those just joining in, I'm talking about a manic episode that I suffered as a result of bipolar disorder. I have bipolar type 1 with psychotic features, and I had a 6-month long manic episode. And I'm currently talking about my experience and stay at Cooley Dickinson Hospital. My hospitalization happened at the beginning of the episode. And my point being, this was an opportunity for the medical professionals to step in, make sure I got the medication I needed, the follow-up treatment that I needed. But none of that happened. Instead, they actually ended up releasing me eventually. And they released me despite the fact that I was more manic than when I had entered the hospital. In the hospital notes, and I would learn this later, they were mentioning that I was having hallucination phone calls with people that did not exist. Now, when I think back to that experience, I clearly and vividly remember having phone conversations with people. So if those were hallucinations, then my mind is truly boggled. Like, wow, that's what hallucinations are like, because these people had personalities and everything. There was an Air Force general I spoke to, and I swear on my life, I remember him speaking back to me. And according to the hospital staff, these people didn't exist. So looking back on it's extremely embarrassing. And here I am sharing it to the internet and putting it out on the internet because, of course, it's just the type of person I am. I have a mental health YouTube channel. I want to share my lived experiences. I want to talk about what I went through in the hopes that we could spread insight about this condition of bipolar disorder, maybe reduce some of the stigma about it, help people learn a little more about what bipolar disorder entails. So while I was in the psych ward, I remember they had this notice of the rights you have as a patient. And one of them was an hour outside daily. It almost sounds like prison conditions, doesn't it? Like where they give inmates an hour outside daily, the other 23, they're inside. Well, we never got that hour outside. Over the course of my 5 days, I got to go outside one time, and it was probably for like 15 to 30 minutes. It wasn't a particularly lengthy amount of time. And before you know it, we were back in the hospital. And at one point, this just goes to speak to how manic I truly was. I wrote an 8-page like manifesto. This thing was like a essay of sorts where I talked about why I'm not delusional. I talked about why they got it all wrong. I talked about how I'm being set up. And I put this in the suggestion box. I can imagine the thoughts of the medical professional who went to that suggestion box and found that 8-page essay of a patient talking about why they're not insane and complaining about the horrible conditions and threatening to get the governor and attorney general involved. Wow. Talk about incredible, right? That's an experience you can't make up. I feel like they probably went home and talked a little bit about that without mentioning my name, but like, oh, we had this one patient who, I know medical professionals aren't supposed to, it's unethical, but come on, everybody does it. Everybody goes home and talks about stories that transpired at work. Nonetheless, I was released from the hospital with no medications, no follow-up treatment plan, no doctor scheduled for me to meet with, and I was essentially sent back into the community. Here I was with heightened fears, heightened paranoia, and super unproductive and incapable of keeping a consistent train of thought. I was very inconsistent in terms of my stability. I was consistently inconsistent, if that makes sense. And my condition only further deteriorated. I went back to the frat house for a little bit. And at the fraternity house, I remember barricading myself in the room because I was afraid that people were angry with me as a result of the press conference I had tried to hold, which got me hospitalized. Anyhow, I ended up going home, and I've talked about this extensively in my videos, so I'm not going to summarize the whole thing here because I know a lot of you have probably already heard this story a few times. But over the course of the next 5 months, I ended up ordering a Hummer limo, which had a personal driver. I went to a church Catholic reactory and signed myself in on the guest list as Jesus. I met with a Catholic father of this enormous church in my community, very well attended and well vouched for. And this Catholic father, we talked about getting me help. And at some point in the conversation, I had mentioned that I was related to John F. Kennedy. And the Catholic father got so spooked, he opened the door, says, "I'm going to do my best to help you." And then he locked the door behind him as soon as I left. Looks like we got a comment in here. Bucell says, "Merry Christmas." Merry Christmas to you, Bucell. Thank you so much for showing up here, and I appreciate your well wishes. I hope you all have a Merry Christmas. I'm 28 years old today, for those who are wondering. I like to say 28 years young. I don't think 28 is particularly old, but I am getting to that point where as I age, it's going to be more and more difficult for me to get this weight off. But I'm moving in the right direction. I've been able to get some of the pounds off. I've been able to shed some off. I haven't weighed myself in some time, but the last time I did, I lost 7 pounds in 13 days. Happy birthday. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Bucell. For everyone tuning in, I was just quickly summarizing some of the notable events of my manic episode. So I was hospitalized at Cooley Dickinson. I barricaded myself in my frat room at times. I rented a Hummer limo. I signed myself in at a church reactory as Jesus. I met with a Catholic father and claimed to be related to John F. Kennedy. And most notably, I got into a fight with a former best friend. And as a result of that physical fight, I got arrested. The police report was sent over to my university, UMass, and they expelled me as a result of the fight I got into, which I don't hold any vendetta. I don't hold any ill will because of that. I think that it was a justifiable consequence of my actions, regardless of the mental illness. There's no denying that mental defect was a mitigating factor, but I don't think that excuses my behavior. I still believe that I should be held accountable for the behavior. And I was held to account. I was expelled by my university, spent 5 days in jail. And in the long run, the charges were dismissed. I was not found guilty. A forensic psychologist evaluated me and agreed with my attorney that I should not be held criminally responsible. And once that expert testimony was provided, the prosecutor decided to dismiss the charges. I guess they felt like they wouldn't be able to have much success at trial because the evidence was overwhelming that I had a mental defect. So in essence, I won with insanity defense. And in case you're wondering how rare that is, insanity defense is used in less than 1% of cases, and it's only successful approximately 26% of the time. So I was one of the people, less than 1% of people who used that defense, who brought up that defense. And not only that, I was one of the 26% who were successful with that defense. But that kind of culminated my manic episode. And so began a multi-year long depressive episode. And during this depressive episode is when I put on a lot of this weight. I went from 180 pounds to a peak of 354. Last time I weighed myself, I was at 327. So I've lost 27 pounds. I'm moving in the right direction, but I still have a long way to go. And right now, ultimately, what I'm doing is I am trying to exercise as much as possible through my depression. And when I exercise, I also tend to control my portions and not overeat. I want to ask you, Bucel, if you're still here, for anybody here, how have your holidays been going? I hope that they're going well for you. I hope that you're doing good. Appreciate each and every one of you being here. But in my depressive episode, I experienced a great deal of anhedonia. That is the inability to experience pleasure, and things I previously got enjoyment from, I no longer derived any enjoyment from, whether it be playing video games, going for long walks, journaling, reading. I just couldn't get myself to focus on any task. Whereas in the past, I was assiduously focused on so many different things, and I was passionate about many different things. Yusel says, it has been better than expected. Have jogged a bit. Oh, nice. And that has helped with anxiety and depression. Absolutely. There's a saying I always liked, and I can't attribute it to any particular person because I'm not sure who said it, but, and I can't even remember who said this to me, but it's that if the effects of exercise could be prescribed in a bottle, it would be the most effective antidepressant in the world. I heard that saying, and I've shared it with multiple of psychiatrists that I've had, therapists I've had, and they've all concurred with that assessment. So, for what it's worth, there's a lot of people in the medical field who feel that way, that exercise is a major component of being healthy, happy, stable. But yeah, I'm happy to hear that you were able to get some jogging in. I've mostly just been doing walking. I've tried doing something I've done before, which is jog a street, walk a street, where I'll jog one street, get my heart rate going, and then I'll use the next road to just casually walk leisurely to calm down. And then I'll jog the next street. But I haven't been able to quite do that yet because I am still a little bit too heavy and it puts too much pressure on my joints. But yeah, that's great. It's helping with your anxiety and depression. I feel the same way whenever I go for a walk. It alleviates my depression. I feel less anxious. I feel more optimistic. So absolutely, that's awesome, Busel. Kenny says, "Happy birthday, Christmas Eve guy." Thank you so much, Kenny. Appreciate you. Indeed, I'm 28 years old, Kenny, if you can believe it. 28 years old. 28 years ago today, I was brought into this world by my lovely mom. And to this day, it's by far closest person to me, person I love most. But I'm grateful she's still around, and I'm grateful to have made it 28 years into this experience of life, into this game of life, into this simulation of life. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But so yeah, I was able to persist through the depression, and there were different things I did that helped with specific symptoms of the depression. So what symptoms was I experiencing? Well, the lack of pleasure from things, anhedonia. I was experiencing fatigue. I was experiencing at times hopelessness. And I think the overarching theme here, what really helped me bring it all together and cope with this and get back into a position where I was on a positive trajectory, is gradualism. And it's recognizing, first of all, that mental illness is not your fault and that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to take a break. When an athlete suffers an injury, if they break their Achilles heel or they break an arm, they take time to recover and heal. Similarly, when you experience a mental health medical episode, it does damage your brain, and you got to take time to recover and let your brain heal. And he says, when it comes to weight loss and depression, I found that diet alone didn't help me lose weight. This might be a me thing. Exercise did probably help shed the cortisol hormones. Interesting. Yeah. Again, I've heard some people say kind of a little bit different, where they say like kitchen is the primary like way, like controlling portion sizes. But that's interesting that you've had a little bit of a different experience. I can't really speak to which one's going to help me more because I'm doing both at the same time. I'm reducing my portions in the kitchen and I'm exercising every day. So it's going to be hard to assign value to any particular one and say, oh, this one's, doing the bulk of the work and this one's doing a smaller part. I think in conjunction, they both work great together. And that's huge. Bucel says, that's nice. I'm also overweight, so I've switched to more weightlifting and biking instead. Okay. Wait, how should we manage money when having bipolar type 1? Is it bad to have it in the stock market? Okay. So going back to what you said in the beginning first, weightlifting and biking, you said, I'm curious, is that something you do do you have your own equipment at home? Or I'm just asking because I have always kind of wanted either a treadmill or like one of the stationary bikes that you could put in your room and exercise at your own convenience on your own time in your home. Or do you go to the gym for that? How should we manage money when having bipolar type 1? So I'll speak to how I managed my money during mania versus how I kind of do so now, or at least while I was working. I don't have much money now because I'm not working, but I'm kind of living off scholarship money because I've had scholarship overpayments to my university. And when that happens, they just refund the money to the student that they can use on any type of expenses related to education, which includes like food, housing, and that sort of thing. So that's kind of where I'm at now. But during mania, I spent very sporadically. I spent money. I remember I ordered, just to show you the wide variety of things I spent money on. I ordered a video game about the Knights Templar. I ordered a NASCAR trading deck, even though I have never been interested or involved in NASCAR. Not judging people who are interested. I'm just saying that like I've never been interested in it. So it's very odd to me that I ordered those cards. I ordered a fake NBA championship ring. I think like a Kobe Bryant one. What else did I do? I ordered a lot of fake jewelry and I went into thrift stores and bought a lot of fake jewelry, and I still have a lot of that too. So during mania, I drained my bank accounts quite quickly. In the beginning phase of my mania, I spent a lot of money on alcohol because it was, for me, a way to put myself at ease with the psychosis I was going through, the delusions, the hallucinations. It was a way to kind of acquiesce away from those delusional failings that I was experiencing. Once I got a job, and this is in the aftermath of mania, once I recovered, I didn't really have like a specific goal of putting this amount aside, this percentage aside, each paycheck or anything like that. But I always took more hours when I could, when I felt like I was able, when I was stable enough to do so, because I wanted to get as much money as possible. I had a bill to my former college to pay off that was worth around $6,000. And so I wanted to save money to do that so I could get my transcript and go to a new school. And yeah, that's the gist of what I did while I was working. As far as having money in the stock market, I don't think that having bipolar disorder should preclude you from doing things that any other normal person would do, as long as you're on a treatment regimen that works for you, whether it involves medication or doesn't involve medication. I mean, why not? There's people who have bipolar disorder who are doctors. There's people who have bipolar disorder who are lawyers. And in both of those instances, there's lots of people who rely on them. And yet, despite that, they're able to find success. They're able to handle their ethical responsibility to their clients, to their patients. And it's something I've worried about myself, Bucel, because I think I mentioned in a previous live stream actually where I was talking about my long-term ambitions of becoming an attorney, and my biggest fear being that I go into another manic episode and all these people who rely on me, my clients, would then be detrimentally affected as a result of my mental state being affected. But you can't allow those fears to preclude you from trying to live a normal, healthy life and striving for your own aspirations. I think investing in the stock market is an excellent idea. Investing in general is an excellent idea. In the long run, it could pay off very well for you. Who knows? But if that's something that you're interested in, I don't think you should not do it because of the fact you have bipolar, especially if you're stable and if you I understand your concern. Like if you go into mania or something, then like that's where it could really jeopardize your circumstances. But all in all, I don't think we should allow fears to dictate our lives and what we aspire to. I hope that answers your question. That's a little bit of my perspective on it. Vsel also says, I have my own stationary bike and I work out at home or at the gym. Okay. So you kind of don't really mind whether you go to one place or another. It's cool. Man, I wish I had my own stationary bike. What's like the price range on those things? I mean, that's got to be like in the thousands, right? Stationary bike, those things are pretty big and they're supposed to last a while. I want to get like a walking pad. I know those are a lot cheaper, but I'm not sure how durable they are, how long they last, or if there are any walking pads that could hold somebody of my weight. So, and plus, walking outside works good for me. I like walking around in nature. Kenny says, I did have mania because I'm sure I have CPTSD, but was misdiagnosed with major depressive disorder. My mania from complex post traumatic stress disorder came out as anger. Okay, so you had mania before. Oh, interesting. Yeah, mania, from my understanding, it's not limited to bipolar disorder by any means. Like just because someone experiences mania, it doesn't mean that they have bipolar disorder. And I guess this goes a little bit into I'm always interested in looking at like the differences between, say, bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, because they're both very serious conditions, but they do have their differences. And the big differences revolve around like lengths of time. With bipolar 1, you're more likely to suffer these like extended periods of mania, and they're very prolonged. Like in my case, I had a 6-month long manic episode. Whereas with bipolar 2, you're more likely to experience like the hypomania, which is can still be very disruptive and can impair your life and be a detriment to your circumstances to a large extent. But it's just a little different from bipolar 1. Bucell says prices on stationary bikes vary a lot. I got mine new for about $800. Hammer Speed Race. You can find great ones that's used as well. Okay. Yeah, I'll actually check that out. Bucell. Let me write that down. Hammer Speed Race. And if they ask me, like on the website, how did I hear about them? I'll make sure I shout you out, Bucell, and hopefully they give you some type of like sales commissioners. No, but seriously, yeah, I'll check out that brand. 800 doesn't sound, it sounds reasonable. I mean, for what it's worth, something that's going to get you in better health, something you could do in the comfort of your own home. Also, I'm wondering how loud is it you sell? Because I do live in an apartment complex and I'm on the second floor. So I'm wondering if like having a stationary bike, does it like make a lot of noise? Or I feel like a treadmill would, but a stationary bike, maybe not as much. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but let me take a sip of my coffee. This little tiny coffee costs $2 at the convenience store across the street from me. Literally $2 for this tiny little coffee. If that's not a ripoff, I don't know what is. And yet, foolish me bought it anyways because I didn't feel like walking a greater distance to the supermarket to buy the ingredients necessary to make my own. It's very good though, vanilla caramel. Bucell says it's not loud at all. Okay, interesting. And Kenny says maybe even 60% exercise and 40% diet. Okay, those are some interesting percentages. Yeah, I'm not sure what my percentages would be. We'll see if I like develop a specific preference over what works more, exercise or dieting over time. Because I'm sure there will be periods of time during my weight loss journey where I kind of emphasize one more over the other. But as it stands right now, I haven't experienced any burnout. I have a really good streak going of getting 10,000 plus steps, 5+ miles per day. Those are my non-negotiables that I do regardless, no matter what. And so long as I get that, and I'm controlling my portion sizes. I know I said in my recent weight loss video that I was going to like count calories, but after doing more research, I kind of decided against that. And there was a saying that a photographer I spoke to gave me. He gave me some advice, and it was actually the photographer for Stat News. I don't know if any of you have read that piece, but on my previous live streams, I put the Stat News article link in the description. I was in a news article that came out December 16th, I think. And it talked about my journeys with bipolar disorder and battling it in regards to social media. Anyhow, the photographer for that company, I spoke with him about weight loss. And one of the pieces of advice he gave me is small wins are better than big failures. And when you're counting calories, it's very tedious. It's extremely time consuming. It takes a lot of work. And he recommended, just watching your portion sizes and kind of like eyeballing it a little bit, and you could make sense of it. You can feel when you're eating too much. When you're eating too much. It's not something you have to like count mathematically and be like, oh, I'm exactly at 676 and oh, now I'm at 933. You don't got to do that. You don't. And so far, I'm proof of that. I've been losing weight. I've lost extreme amounts of weight before. I've gone from 270 to 180 before, stayed there for about a year and a half, put the pounds back on because of that manic episode and depressive episode. But now I've gone from 354 to 327. And during both those experiences, I personally didn't count calories. I'm not counting calories. And it might work for some people. For me, it's just not my strong suit. I don't want to overthink things and make it more complicated than it needs to be. Bucel says, how is the welfare system in the US for people who struggle with mental health issues like bipolar that can't have a stable job? Bucel, so it's going to vary a lot from state to state. Now, where I live in Massachusetts, which is one of the more progressive states, and it tends to be ahead on issues of like food insecurity or health insurance. And like we have a very high percentage of people who are covered health insurance wise. We have, I believe we're number one in education in the United States out of all 50 states. And I didn't expect to come on here and talk about Massachusetts, but it really depends on a state by state basis. I would say Massachusetts overall is quite well, and I think it's a model that other states should exemplify. Now, nationally, there is Social Security disability, and it's extremely challenging to get on Social Security disability. You could have a severe mental health disability, and bipolar disorder is one. It's recognized as one. And you'll still be denied for Social Security disability benefits if they deem that you don't meet their specific criteria. And so there's people with bipolar who receive benefits to help them compensate for not having a job. There's other people with bipolar who are homeless. So the circumstances are highly variable. But as far as coverage and, even things as simple as medical transportation programs or hospitalization programs that are covered by insurance, so you don't have to pay out of pocket, or medication being paid for. One of my medications, just one of them, if I had to pay for it out of pocket, it would be $1,000 a month. $1,000 a month for just one of my 4 medications. And I'm very grateful I live in a state where I have great health insurance coverage that allows me to get it. Nothing out of pocket. That's huge. So yeah, it really varies, Bucel, state from state. But even nationally, it's pretty difficult for a lot of people because the Social Security system is not made easy. A little bit of a conspiracy on my part, but I suspect that they make it difficult on purpose because they don't want as many people to have benefits. It's as simple as that. Yana Bands 102 says, happy birthday and happy holidays, Tyler. Thank you, Yana. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you're enjoying the holidays and that you have a wonderful Christmas tomorrow with whomever you decide to spend it with. And I hope you have a happy new year. Kenny Lee says, what's your dream career? I want to be a fiction writer. You. Okay, that's very interesting, Kenny. Are there any like particular fiction genres that you read right now? I'm a big fan of, and this will get to answering your first question. I'm a big fan of like legal thrillers, particularly by like John Grisham. And so I like books like The Pelican Brief is a fantastic book and also a fantastic movie. I feel like oftentimes the movies kind of come very short in terms of matching the quality of the book, but that's a movie where I've actually really liked it. And so legal thrillers are my go-to for fiction. But dream career, I want to be a lawyer. I want to go to law school, get my law degree. I want to become an attorney, get my license to practice law. And I'm leaning between Social Security, disability law, and being a criminal defense attorney, a public defender. And I would like to, if I do choose that route, I like to specifically specialize in cases where I'm representing clients with mental health issues and do as much insanity defense as possible to help people who had health defects as mitigating factors in their crimes not have their entire lives ruined over one mistake that was something arguably beyond their control. Kenny says, I'm into horror and adventure for now. Okay. Yeah. I'm, as far as horror, I used to, you're going to laugh at this, but I used to read Goosebumps when I was a kid. And that was even a little bit too terrifying for me. And I know those aren't really like a strong, horrifying genre, but I'm not someone who would probably be able to get into horror. But I bet that would be very fascinating to write. And it would probably take a lot of creativity, but you can do it. If you put your mind to it, if you're diligent, if you're committed, you can absolutely do it. And adventure. Okay. Could you give like an example of what an adventure one would look like? I'm just a little curious. Thank you everyone for joining in and being here. For those who are kind of just joining in, I'm 28 years old today. And if you're new to my channel altogether, I mainly talk about mental health topics. I'm talking about weight loss a lot recently just because I'm trying to lose weight. As you can see, I'm morbidly obese and I got a lot of work to do. But yeah, I have over 90 plus videos where I talk about my battles with bipolar disorder. I've even been mentioned in a news article about bipolar disorder, which is very recent. So my experience has really been expounded upon, and I'm putting myself out there. And it was actually because of this YouTube channel that I was able to facilitate getting put in that news article. Stat News, if anyone's curious, just type in Stat News Tyler Adolfo and it will come up. If you want something to read, if you're curious about the negative impacts that bipolar mania can have on social media and the consequences that emanate from that. Wow. So I think one of the last things I was talking about was the hardest year of my life, and that was 2022. And I won't go back to talking about that. I already mentioned a lot of the circumstances surrounding that. But I will talk a little bit about how my thinking has shifted, how my perspective has changed since being diagnosed and since becoming stable. So, since being diagnosed, I've realized just how fragile the mind can truly be and how terrifying it can be to lose control of your sanity. Because I lost control of my central command center for 6 months, and I had a depressive episode that followed, which went on for years and years. During those years, I put on massive amounts of weight, which led me to my present state of being 327 pounds. And it really got me to kind of appreciate each and every day a little bit more, because there were so many moments during my mania, so many moments during that depressive episode where I felt like it could have been my last day. And I'm very fortunate to still be around right now. And I'm grateful to God. I'm grateful for those who stuck by me. I'm grateful to all my YouTube subscribers who've been following my stories about my lived experiences, and as well as sharing their own. So it's always interesting to hear other perspectives, other stories, and to realize that we're not alone. Since becoming stable, I've kind of realized, and I'm still coming to terms with this completely, but I've kind of realized that there's nothing beyond my grasp insofar as I'm diligent in taking my medications and I'm committed to following my treatment plans, adhering to my treatment regimen. There's no goal beyond my grasp. I can become an attorney. There are accomplished attorneys out there who have bipolar disorder. Kenny says, The Lords of the Ring is a good example of an adventure. Okay, adventure book to me. I've watched the movies and really liked them. I only read the first half of the first book in the trilogy. I wonder how many books there are. I wonder, it must be similar to Harry Potter, right? Where there's like so many to catch. If you haven't read it before, you have a lot of catching up to do and that sort of thing. I would love to read the books. I just know the books would be, I mean, the movies were great. I really like the movies, but I think the books would probably be so much better just based off how well the movies were. Like I can't think of a situation where a book version of a story sucked and the movie version was great. I just can't think of one. And I don't know if this would count as an adventure book or if you're familiar with it, Kenny, but I really like The Count of Monte Cristo. I like all the movies about it. I like the parts of the book that I've read. It's like a tombstone of a book. It takes a long time. I haven't never actually finished it, but I'd like to someday. And it's a page turner for sure. Bissell says, I lost control of my sanity for 3 years. I'm still not stable years later. If I could have one wish in my life, it would have to be stable to feel normal. Yeah, I resonate with that feeling a lot. And I'm sorry that you had to go 3 years of not having your sanity. And I can understand why it would be so challenging to recover from that. That's a daunting task. I mean, 3 years. I lost control of my sanity for 6 months. So yours was significantly longer than what I went through. But you're still around today and you're a very resilient person for surviving that and continuing to persist on with life. I'm not sure if I'd be able to recover from a 3 year one. And even though you're not stable now, just try to recognize how far you've come, even if you're not in the perfect place. There was a really good quote I saw the other day, and it's by Voltaire. Good old Voltaire says, the best is the enemy of the good. In other words, we're always like striving to be the best, to have perfection, that we come short and fail to realize what's good. So I could be upset about the fact that I'm not in the best shape. And in doing so, I would likely fail to realize and be grateful for the fact that I've lost 27 pounds from my highest, that I'm losing weight and trending in the right direction. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, that's a Voltaire quote. The best is the enemy of the good. And yeah, I saw that in a book and I just really liked it. I actually wrote it down and everything. Kenny says, oh yeah, and Harry Potter is an adventure book to me. And it's also a fantasy series too. Yeah. Yeah, I followed quite a few of the Harry Potter movies. I did have like the first two books. What was like the Chamber of Secrets, the one with the stone, and I would get into reading them, but I never finished them. When I was younger, I was much more interested in nonfiction, but I could probably get into them now if I still had them. I don't have them anymore. I'm not sure what happened to the Harry Potter books that I did have. If you're just joining in, everybody, please hit that like button so more people can see this. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll be on here for a little bit to answer any questions, or if you have any stories you want to share, please feel free. Not sure if anyone can relate, but over the years, I've had tremendous difficulty maintaining jobs. And I attribute a lot of that to my mental illness. Let's see, the longest job I had was probably like somewhere between 7 to 10 months. I can't pinpoint the exact like start and end dates, but I've never actually held a job for longer than a period of a year, which I could be hard on myself and be embarrassed about that and be like, oh, wow, you're 28 and you've never had a job for more than a year. Look, I've worked many jobs. I've worked for most of my life. It's just that I do have an illness that can result in me being unstable. I do have an illness that can make it tough to be productive and to be consistent every day. Whenever I do have a job, my employers, my bosses always say that I'm like a fantastic employee. I'm a great worker, very hardworking, and they tend to want to promote me pretty quickly too. Like when I was a high school dropout, I was working as a cashier at Dollar Tree, small retail store. In case you don't got any near you and you're not sure what it is, but they're a retail chain, pretty large. They have lots of stores. The store sizes are pretty small. So I was started off as a cashier there, and within the first few months, I was being offered store manager in training. And I was a young 18, 19-year-old kid, and I could have had that opportunity of becoming a store manager before I was 20 years old, store manager of a retail store, which is huge. But I didn't take it. I couldn't take it because you needed transportation. You needed a car in order to take advantage of that opportunity. And it worked out for the best because I ended up returning to high school. I mentioned I was a high school dropout. I ended up returning to high school and getting my high school diploma. Bucel says, I'm on disability. Luckily, here in Norway, we get paid enough to live a normal life. Well, I'm happy to hear that you're in Norway. It sounds like Norway is pretty progressive on that front. Would that be a correct guess? Like they're ahead of other countries in terms of taking care of those who need help or who could benefit from extra help. If so, it's a model we should follow. I know that very interestingly, and I'm going to mention this just because I feel like addiction and abuse, drug abuse, substance abuse can oftentimes be very intertwined with mental illness. Portugal, many years ago, decided that they were going to legalize all drugs. Crazy, right? I'm talking heroin, cocaine, LSD. They legalized it. And all the experts reacted to that and said, it's going to be chaos. Your drug addiction rates are going to skyrocket. And the Portuguese model today, people look at it and they realize this is an exemplary model that we should exemplify. And it's because instead of prioritizing punishment, Portugal prioritizes treatment. So instead of sending someone to spend 25 years in jail because they were selling some drug or they had in their possession a larger quantity of a drug, they'll spend money on offering job incentives to employers to hire people who have a past history of drug use to incentivize them getting employed. Whereas in the United States and in some other countries, it's extremely difficult to get a job if you have any type of criminal record because, right, you got to check the box that says that you were a criminal at one point. And it's almost like treating people like they're irredeemable. But the Portuguese model is very interesting. And I'm not just sharing that because I'm Portuguese. My dad's side of the family is Portuguese. I'm just sharing it because that's something I learned pretty recently, is the Portugal model of how they handle drug addiction. It's very interesting. Bucel says, definitely, Norway is one of the best countries when it comes to the welfare system. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to do more research on it because I am curious. And as someone who's considering going into like public service someday in some capacity, I'd like to learn more about different models that work and try to, instead of have an ideology guide every single policy I formulate, to have results and outcomes drive the policies that I devise, right? I don't think ideology should be the guide for everything, especially when you're responsible for who knows how many people. But yeah, I'm happy to hear that they have a strong safety net. I know that there was a recent piece of legislation passed where I'm not going to get into politics and start like blaming people or anything, but piece of legislation that kicks around 420,000 school children off of free school lunch and breakfast. And keep in mind, like, what type of person do you have to be like, oh, I don't want my taxpayer dollars go towards feeding hungry kids at school so they could focus on their schoolwork, right? Kids are literally our future. They're going to be your future teachers, your future doctors, your future lawyers, your future laborers, future everything. And if they're hungry at school, they're going to be less focused. They're not going to be able to have as good outcomes as they would. But yeah, I mean, stuff like that. I just can't get behind that. Kicking 420,000 children off of free school lunch and breakfast, that's insanity to me. I don't see what net benefit that presents to society in the long run. I think in the long run, it's an investment to make sure people are focused, assiduously focused at school and getting the best outcomes possible. But Bisal says, there is no homeless here in Norway. I feel so bad for the poor in the US. We only have a population of 5 million. No homeless at all. Wow. Yeah, I could tell Busal that you're a person of empathy, that you have strong, how do I want to word this? You have high emotional intelligence. I can pick that off you just from reading your comments and the style with which you not speak, but type, I guess. Because I know we're not speaking like formally, like person to person, audio to audio, but I could tell that you have very high emotional intelligence. And yeah, in the US, this is a figure from a few years ago, so it might be even higher now. But 500,000 Americans sleep on the streets every single night. 500,000 homeless Americans, people sleep on the street every night. And in many cases, these are veterans, kids, people with disabilities, whether they be physical or mental. And yeah, it's extremely tragic. There's no excuse for the wealthiest country in the world to condone 500,000 of their fellow citizens living on the streets. And I've heard cop out excuses like, oh, well, they want to be there, or they failed and they deserve to be there. Like, what happened to people's humanity? It really bothers me. I am out of coffee, so I am now switching to water. Kenny says, I'm starting to stabilize mentally. It took decades, though. I wish the same for you. Thank you. I'm 37 years old now. I started to stabilize at about 35 years old. Okay. Yeah, the current plan that I have set out for myself, as far as graduating from college, going to law school, I should be done with law school by the time I'm 35. That's assuming everything works out perfectly and I don't have any more hypomanic episodes, any more manic episodes, any more depressive episodes. It's like an ideal world situation. So I do empathize a lot with what you're saying, as far as I'm sorry that it took decades for you, but you did it, right? You're starting to stabilize. Think about how far you've come relative to where you were, and be proud of that progress, because not a lot of people can do that. I truly do believe that people who deal with these challenges are some of the strongest, most resilient in the world. And when we are stable, we are fierce competitors and we stand to make a huge difference in this world when we're stable. So don't undervalue yourself. Don't downplay your value just because it took you a certain amount of time. We all follow our own timeline. And I am really happy to hear that things are getting better for you, Kenny. And yeah, my best advice would be to think about in terms of how far you've come. That's what I do a lot. Think about where I am today compared to where I was. Kenny says, speaking of college or university, I remember having issues fitting in some seats at my university when I was even bigger, obese. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. I actually had a similar issue. I mean, the same issue this semester that I attended college. The seats in some of the classes were like very weird. They're like these pull out seats, right? Well, you sit down and the desk portion, the table that you would write or type on, you can pull it apart, pull it closer. And whenever I couldn't fully pull it in because my stomach is too big. And so that was a little embarrassing to me, a little bit uncomfortable, very uncomfortable to me, actually. So, yeah, there's a lot of downsides to being overweight, especially obese. For me, the biggest one right now is joint pains and just on a day by day basis going through those. And I could feel it a lot when I go on my walks. I'm doing about 10,000 steps a day, which is about 5 miles ish, a little more than 5 miles sometimes. And man, let me tell you, when I finish, My joints are like slaughtering me. It's brutal, man. But I'm doing it because I know in the long run it will be beneficial. But I do worry sometimes, like, what if I get injured on this journey? Then it would be really challenging to get the rest of the weight off. But I can't think like that. I can't just think of the negative. I have to focus on the positive. There's been plenty of people out there who've been even a greater weight than I am, who've been able to lose the weight. And so I just got to think about those stories and use them as a source of inspiration. Thank you for everyone being here. If anyone's tuning in just now, this is just a kind of a anything goes stream. If you have any questions, anything you want to share, feel free to put it in the chat. And I am reading every single chat. But yeah, there is no particular theme for this stream, except for me mentioning every couple of minutes that I am now 28 years old. Kenny says, yep, I remember them desks that you pull out towards you, your stomach. Yep, exactly. Not exactly the biggest fan of those personally. I've been trying to drink 2 of these every single day. When I first started my 10,000 steps a day, I had a lot more success. And now I'm kind of getting to like 1.5, like by the time each day is finished. But it's still better than what I've done before because I haven't drank a lot of water. Haven't been drinking enough water. But this is my second of the day. So once I get this down, that will be my 2 for the day. That's my goal. On my birthday, I want to get those 2 down. Diesel says, I have increased social anxiety when being in public in my hometown. It's because of the things I did while manic and the rumors that people spread about me. Do you feel similar? Absolutely, Bissell. Especially when I first came out of mania. Because when I was in mania, I was disseminating all kinds of embarrassing, well, what would later become embarrassing things on my social media accounts, on my Instagram, my Snapchat, my Facebook, my Twitter. And my whole community saw these posts. And when I say my whole community, I'm not like hyperbolizing, because on Facebook, for instance, I went to the community page for my local town, which has thousands of members. And while I was in Cooley Dickinson Hospital, I posted that I had been kidnapped. Someone call a lawyer. And people made all kinds of really vile comments towards me. You would think people would be understanding or try to like avoid, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all, that type of logic. But no, that did not happen. There were people making comments like, oh, someone's off their meds or someone belongs in an insane asylum. Like, really? I mean, it is what it is, but it happened. And when my mania first went away, I was so scared of going outside. Cannot stress it enough. I would isolate in my house for months upon months. And the only time I would actually leave my apartment is to go to medical appointments or to occasionally visit family, which wasn't very often. And so I'm with you. I understand that. And as far as people spreading rumors, my best advice here, because I had a very similar fear that everyone's talking about me, everybody knew about it. And because of that, I have to always be afraid of it. This is my advice. People are so preoccupied and busy with their own lives. It's highly unlikely that they're thinking about you as much as you think they're thinking about you. And I hope I'm wording that in a way that's my intention is to come across in a, like, I mean that in a positive way, but people are just so hyper focused on themselves because they're busy with work and school. And that's what helped me kind of come to terms with a lot of the trepidation and anxiety that I felt when I was coming out of mania and when I wanted to start going outside again, is just recognizing that, people are so busy and it's unlikely that they're as focused on what happened as I think they are. Now, it makes sense that I'm super focused on what happened during mine, that you're super focused on yours, what happened during yours. And that could kind of create an impression that everyone is thinking about it, or that everyone is. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if I'm even making sense, but yeah, my best advice would just to be kind of recognizing that and try not to be too hard on yourself. What happened during your mania is not your fault. S- Kenny says, my genius idea, stay in your current city or town to heal, then move once you're stable enough, restart in a new place. Yeah, there's different ways that people deal with things, and if that's something that works for someone, then they should absolutely pursue it if it's within their means to do so. Absolutely. I certainly wouldn't, like, while you're, as you mentioned, like, stay while you heal, because if you move while you're still trying to heal, that could add a lot of unnecessary stress. But if in the aftermath you feel like you need to create that space and distance from your past, because triggers and cues are huge in mania, like, if you witness and see things that still trigger you or cues that trigger illness, then it would be good to create some separation and get away from those things. Yusel says, yeah, makes sense. Thanks. You're welcome, Yusel. I'm glad that you found it a little helpful. My social anxiety has evolved a lot over the years. Going back as far as middle school is when I actually had the worst social anxiety, even more so than in the aftermath of my manic episode. And in middle school, I was just, I don't know if this may come as a surprise to some, but I was like severely bullied in middle school. And I always had an angry face on, like angry facial expression, because I was just upset and depressed with my life, and I was living in great anguish. But I got put on a medication called Celexa, and that slowly pulled me out of my shell, and it actually transformed me in the long run from being a shy, introverted kid into a class clown. And then later on, I would get put on a medication called Zoloft, and Zoloft was highly transformative for me. I had the best school year of my life while I was on Zoloft, that SSRI, which is interesting because now that I have bipolar, I'm not really supposed to be on any SSRIs. I think one of the medications I'm on is an SSRI, but the reason for that is, from what my psychiatrist has told me, is SSRIs can increase the probability of someone with bipolar going into mania. And so many are hesitant to put bipolar patients on uh, SSRIs because of that. Kenny says, did you ever take Lexapro? Yes, it is, in fact, one of the medications I'm on now. And I think that is the SSRI I was referring to, because I'm on the 4 drugs I take are Wellbutrin, Vraylar, lamotrigine, and Lexapro. And I think Lexapro is the SSRI, lamotrigine's a mood stabilizer, Vraylar is a antipsychotic, and Wellbutrin is, like, I think the major role is an antidepressant. I'm not too sure on that, but those are the 4 that I'm on. I actually went down on my Lexapro a little bit recently after the hypomanic episode that I suffered this past semester. And I feel like the decrease has been helpful, allowed me to become more stable without sacrificing confidence in terms of dealing with social anxiety and so forth. The most impactful one I've taken, though, of the 4 I'm on, and I guess this is a little bit tough for me to say just because I've been on so many drugs at the same time at different times, and this is a question that always kind of catches me off guard with psychiatrists, and it's one I struggle to answer. It's really tough to answer because, so what they ask is, they'll pose the question, which medication do you feel like is helping? If you're on 4 medications, how are you supposed to know which one is helping? I don't know. I don't know. Like, if I'm feeling better, I don't know which medication to attribute it to, right? But like recently, with my decrease in Lexapro, I felt more stable. And since that was the only variable that changed, I could credit that decrease to me taking a little less Lexapro. But the most transformative one that I've taken for me personally so far has been Wellbutrin for pulling me out of depression. And then even though I'm not on it now, another huge one, was a bit. Hold on, got like a piece of hair in my mouth. I don't know where that came from. But Abilify pulled me out of the depths of mania very speedily, very successfully. Bucell says, I had a dream where I actually felt 100% stable within the dream. I felt as the person I was before being bipolar. Have you ever experienced something like that? That does sound like an interesting dream, Bucell. Did that like affect you emotionally in any way when you woke up? I'm curious. If you don't mind sharing, you don't have to, but like what emotions did that make you feel to kind of be have that like memory of what you used to be like? Because I feel like that would hit me pretty hard if I had that. I haven't personally experienced a dream like that. I have had lots of dreams though from like time periods of my manic episode. So I can relate in some extent. I've had lots of dreams, some of which I would characterize as nightmares, but mostly my dreams are just strange. They're very odd. I have lots of dreams about the time I was living in the frat house. And I believe a lot of that is because I feel a great deal of shame and doubt about what happened with my fraternity, my falling out, and I miss having all those friendships. And it's tough going through life after having all those friendships and then not having them any longer. It creates a void. Bissell says, it had a huge effect on me emotionally, and it made me more motivated to find the cure to become that stable uh, IRL in real life. Okay, it's interesting. It happened 2 days ago, and I've only had such dreams 2 times in the last 10 years after becoming bipolar with psychotic symptoms. Okay, so you've had it 2 times in the last 10 years, but that particular dream has stuck out to you. I know with some people, dreams are like so vivid and they could remember them very strongly, very well. I'm the type of person who forgets my dreams generally. The one exception being whenever I have dreams about my former college fraternity that I was in and all the positive memories I had with them. Because there were a lot of positives. There were fun moments, like, and there were negatives, but there were a lot of fun moments. Like, I remember waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning and having rap battles with some of my friends. I remember a day where we sang Pockets Full of Sunshine in front of a pool in front of a sorority girl's house. And then afterwards, we all jumped in the pool and got soaked. But, just little funny moments like that. And, but I digress. Yeah, 2 times in the last 10 years. That's interesting. So it's not like a consistently recurring dream, but you have had it twice. So having any dream more than once. It's interesting that you remembered like the relationship between the first one and the second one. Yeah, a dream like that would really strike a chord with me. It would be very challenging for me to kind of deal with that. I don't. I always say that like a part of me died after being diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Really, a part of me died during mania. I haven't yet captured that same level of confidence that I once possessed, and my self esteem is nowhere near where it once was. I'm doing better now than I was during my depressive period, but I still have a lot of progress, still a lot of progress to be made. One area I definitely got to make some progress on is better management of my money in terms of transportation. In this semester, I'm not like, this is not hyperbole. I spent thousands of dollars on Uber rides to my university and home because I couldn't get used to the bus system. And I'm really regretting it now. I look at the Uber app and I see all these rides that I took, and it's like, man, it would be great to have that money right now, but it is what it is. I mean, Uber, it's convenient, but is it really worth it in the long run? Yeah, you can tell I'm not going to be getting any Uber sponsorships anytime soon. Not exactly a compelling endorsement, right? Bucell says, no, not consistently, and I agree it's interesting that I remember them so well. Yes, a part of me also died after becoming bipolar. If you don't mind sharing, I'm curious, Bucell, how often do you think about, because you mentioned how in your dreams you could feel like you were that person you were before bipolar. outside of the dreams, just like when you're conscious and awake, how often do you have those like feelings or experiences where you think about what you were like before becoming bipolar? Because I do have moments where I'm very reflective. I think back to times as early as high school, as far away as high school, where I had lots of success in school competitions. And I don't know, I think a part of it is just like evolution in some sense, because, right, it's all survival of the fittest. And bipolar disorder, it's a struggle to survive. And by reflecting on moments where I was doing really well for myself, I'm kind of emphasizing and making clear to myself that I've experienced success before and I could experience success again. That reminder can be helpful sometimes, but for others, it can be traumatizing. I can totally understand that. Not sure if anyone here is into video games, but later tonight I'm going to be playing with my friend of 18 years, Tesm. We're going to be playing this game called Tom Clancy's The Division. It's pretty fun. I didn't think I would like it, but I'm actually enjoying it. Bissell says, I think about it a lot, actually. I try to become that stable again. I struggle with thinking a lot about the past. Yeah, it's one of those things where I feel like balance is key. If we're thinking about it too much, it can be a bane. If we think about it in moderation and on a limited basis, then it could be a source of strength depending on how you reflect and the perspective and attitude you have towards your past. Like if you're remembering it in terms of like, oh, this is a part of me I'll never experience again, versus this is a part of me that I can experience again, but in a different way. You know, just because a part of us died during bipolar, it doesn't mean we're right dead. It doesn't mean we're fully gone. It doesn't mean we're hopeless. There's still hope for us. It's absolutely still hope for us. I'm just still fascinated that you said you're from Norway. That's really cool. There's a I was just mentioning video games, but you kind of when you said that, you reminded me of a Age of Empires 2 professional that I watch. He was for a time period the greatest Age of Empires player, and he's currently been superseded by a player named Hera, who's Canadian. But this Norwegian player was named the Viper, and very cool guy. Loved his streams, watched them all the time. Kenny says, I know this is a late reply to a question, but yes, I take Lexapro too. I also used to take Celexa. Hey, better late than never, Kenny. And no worries, you never have to worry about that. Any reply at any time is perfectly fine with me, or no reply is fine with me. But yeah, you take Lexapro as well and used to take Celexa. Interesting. So yeah, I took Celexa. It was kind of for, I think it was for like generalized anxiety, because I used to have anxiety of like, I'm going to fall out of my desk type of anxiety, or I don't want to read in a classroom full of people type anxiety. That's the kind of anxiety that I dealt with. With Lexapro, it's hard for me to say what impact it has. I do know that since decreasing my dose just a little bit, it was like a small dosing decrease, I felt a little more stable, and I feel like my mood hasn't fluctuated as much as it was towards the end of the semester. LV Deco 8297. I hope I'm saying your name right. Apologize if I'm not. Says, I apologize if you already talked about it, but do you feel it would have been better if you took online college classes? I have thought about this, and you actually remind me of someone who actually came into my comment section when I was making videos talking about how I want to return to college, but I hadn't at the time proactively taken the steps to do so, to facilitate that. And he mentioned to me some online classes that could be taken at a university called University of Maine at Presque Isle. And they have an online program called Your Pace, where you take two classes at a time during like 8 week sessions, and you basically go at your own pace. You could finish the two classes in 2 weeks. You could spend the whole 8 weeks taking the two classes. And as soon as you finish a course, if you so choose, you can add another course to your schedule. Now, I do think about whether or not that would have been a more beneficial pathway, but I feel like my environment for schoolwork ultimately needed to be a little different than my home environment. And by being able to go to campus and actually be in the class and socialize, you know, even as an introvert, that sense of belonging is incredibly important to me. And I think that would have been lost if I had done online, but I'm not opposed to doing it in the future. I have considered, in lieu of getting a law degree, going for a master's online just to save a lot of money and to further bolster my resume, polish it up, get further credentials. Like, they have a master's program at University of Maine. It's in like operations management or something like that. And I was considering going into that for a period of time. And it's so much more, right? Online school is so much more affordable. You're still getting quality. I don't adhere to this idea that online is less. It really, right, depends on the teacher. It depends on the student. Both of those variables matter. If you have a world-class professor on your screen versus some adjunct professor at your local college, I mean, do you really think that just by the mere fact that your world-class professor is coming through a screen that it's going to be lower quality? It might be higher quality. It might be. It just might be. Bustel says, the truth is that when I was manic with psychosis, I had times where I was stable, but I took LSD and it sent me so manic and psychotic that I was never able to become 100% stable after that. Interesting. I'm very stable compared to before, and I know people who are completely lost compared to me. I fight every day and work hard to become stable and happy. Yeah, well, I'm sorry to hear you've never been able to become 100% stable. And I feel like that's a really tough goal to kind of set for oneself. There's nothing wrong with setting that, but I kind of just would like to draw attention back to that Voltaire quote, which is, the best is the enemy of the good. In our pursuit of perfection, we often neglect to see and appreciate the good. And right, small steps are still steps in the right direction. Small amounts of progress is still progress. And it's okay to give yourself credit for the progress that you have made. And I'm glad to hear that you're still fighting and that you're being diligent to work hard and to become stable and happy. It just is a demonstration of your resilience. LV says, I just wanted to say that you are very intelligent and eloquent. I believe you can be successful. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. Thank you so much. It is my 28th birthday, so kind words on a birthday especially hit home. I got a free coffee earlier today, too. Not this one. This one was $2, but my morning coffee, which was of a much greater size, it's usually $1.25. I told the cashier it's my birthday, and he said, Merry Christmas, you can have it for free. So, yeah, I should have went back there. Maybe he would have gave me another free one. But thank you so much, Alvi. That means a lot. Oh, I think I skipped over a comment here. B-Cell says, how do you feel about missing out on the social part because of doing online? Oh, so sorry if I misworded what I said, but B-Cell, I'm actually not doing online classes. I am doing in person, but I'm taking a break off. I was considering doing online classes, but the main motivator for me not doing online classes was missing out on the social aspect, which I know might sound a little weird considering I'm an introvert to be saying that, but yeah. Kenny says, do you believe in God? I'm not mad if you don't. I'm just curious. I absolutely do, Kenny. And notably, during my times of hardship, I know this is different for everyone. Some people during times of hardship will struggle with their faith or lose their faith altogether. My faith in God has been quite consistent and quite strong throughout my life. And it's not like I don't come from a super religious family. My family is probably less religious than the average family. Like, if you ask them what they are, they would say they're Christian, but they're not the type who go to church every week, or, I mean, I don't think some of my cousins have been to church in their entire lives, but they still call themselves Christian. Me, I love going to church. I always find it invigorating, but it really depends on the church too. I've had some bad experiences in church, and I have a video where I talk about that actually, but I never liked this idea that you have to be in a church in order to worship God or to pay your respect to God. I truly believe you can do that anywhere. And but I go to church for like the social connection component. That's why I like going to church. But to get back to like the main part of your question is, do you believe in God? Absolutely, unequivocally, without a shadow of a doubt, I believe in God. I just believe that, and I don't pass judgment on people who don't, but I believe that the patterns of this universe and the way things are constructed are so intricately designed, and there's so much synchronicity that I find it hard to believe that all of this just kind of happened without there being some form of grand architect. And I will say, and I've mentioned this in like one video out of my 420 plus videos, but I am a Freemason. And one of the requirements of being a Freemason is that you believe in God, that you believe in a higher power. And I'm not going to spill Masonic secrets or anything, but let's just say since becoming a Mason, I've become much more confident in the fact that there is a God for reasons that I will not share. But yes, I absolutely believe in God. I believe personally that Jesus is my savior. Busel says, I also think you are very intelligent. You seem to have high emotional intelligence and high IQ. Thank you, Busel. I appreciate you. Love it, love it, love it. Oh, man, I wish I still had more coffee left. I keep looking over at my coffee, and as soon as I do, I realize there's not any left, so then I have to settle for the water. But I think I have like a droplet left. I'm going to go for that last drop because I want to savor every little bit of the $2 that I spent on this tiny cup of coffee. Oh, and that quote I shared earlier, I should probably attribute where I got it from. I mean, it's from Voltaire, but got it from this book here, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Tiny changes, remarkable results. I'm enjoying it a lot. But that quote just really stuck out to me so much so that I wrote it down. The best is the enemy of the good. Not sure if anyone here can relate, but I kind of want to talk about doom scrolling. Not sure if anyone's familiar with that term, but doom scrolling refers to like the constant swiping and scrolling on your phone on social media, whether it be Facebook or the more like addictive sites like TikTok or YouTube shorts, where you kind of just like swipe, watch another one, swipe, watch another one, swipe, watch another one, and it just never ends. It's interfering with my sleep and it's gotten pretty bad. Like I go to bed and I lay down and I'll go on TikTok thinking like, all right, I can watch TikToks for 10 minutes and that should be perfectly okay. And then 2 hours later, I'm still on TikTok. And then before you know it, it's like 4 in the morning and I haven't gotten off of TikTok. That's what doom scrolling is. But I don't know if anyone can relate to that, but that's one area where I'm trying to break a bad habit. And I'm hoping that the wisdom of this book will help me do that. I'm not sponsored by James Clear, by the way. I just think it's a great book that people could benefit from if they give it a shot. Speaking of tired, I am pretty tired. Probably because of the doom scrolling. For a long time after my manic episode, because my phone broke during the fight that I got into, my mother and I actually had to share a phone. And we both had lots of, doctors that would call, and it was an incredibly confusing and challenging time. And a little embarrassing when I had to give out my number to my employer and say, hey, by the way, I don't always have my phone on me. And they say, what do you mean? And I'd say, well, I share a phone with my mom. Yeah, I'm in my mid 20s and I share a phone with my mom. We don't do that anymore. we both have our own cell phones again. Thank the Lord. But Bucell says, I have the same doom scroll struggle. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. We're both struggling together, Bucell. What app do you struggle with? For me, it's TikTok. I'm not too big of a Facebook guy personally, not as much as I used to be. But for me, it's TikTok. I watch a lot of lately I've been getting lots of Rottweiler videos because I love dogs and I've always wanted to own a Rottweiler. So I currently just have a cat. I have a cat named Smokey. He's 18. So he'll be 19 next year. And I can't believe how old this cat is. And he's still going pretty strong. No, he's not as energetic as he used to be, but he's still going. Vissel says TikTok the most. I also watch YouTube Reels. Yeah, TikTok is super addictive. I've gotten into YouTube Shorts at times too, but something about TikTok just makes it more addictive. And I remember reading an article once and actually seeing this in like a documentary too. One of the architects, I believe it was of Facebook, not Mark Zuckerberg, but someone else who was like a prominent higher up in Facebook, said something to the effect that when they were designing Facebook, they purposefully did so in a way to try to make it more addictive than crack. Just let that sit for a moment. And I do believe that any addiction, when severe, can be very bad. Like, I love video games, but I'm not addicted to them. And it could be a detriment on my life if I, only played video games and had that occupy large portions of my day, but I don't. Similarly, though, I do have that technological addiction to doom scrolling with TikTok. So, oh, by the way, I watched a great movie 2 days ago. It's called Girl Interrupted. It's a movie about mental health. I highly recommend it. Okay. Girl Interrupted. Which service did you watch it on, Bucell? I mean, I could look it up too, so don't worry, but I'm always down to learn more about mental health. Netflix? Okay. Yeah, currently subscribed to Amazon Prime Video. My mom and I kind of switch month to month. So like 1 month we did Hulu, Disney Plus, and then the next month we did Netflix, and now we're doing Amazon Prime Video. But of all the services I've used, I would say I like Netflix the most. I feel like they get programs that more align with my interests. So once we switch back to Netflix, which should be next month, I'll give it a look. I have it written in my notebook, and so once I see it, will give me a reminder. Addiction is also more common with people with bipolar. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Addiction and mental illness are so closely intertwined. One can fuel the other. Some people will use, substances as a way to deal with or ease the feelings that come with having a severe mental illness. Other people will, it's sad, but it's true. And I think that there's a huge influence of, as it relates to doom scrolling, there's a huge influence of technology on mental illness as well, because it gets us to constantly like compare ourselves to others. Well, I shouldn't speak for everybody, but at least in my case, the comparison to others, standards of comparison, I do get involved in that loop of thinking quite often, and it's not healthy. I know it's not. I think you will love the movie. I'm going to watch the movie you recommended me, Beautiful Mind. Oh, glad to hear it. Yeah, Beautiful Mind is great. Oh, I gotta let my cat out of my room real quick. I'll be right back. He's gonna keep meowing, so. Come on, Smokey. There we go. He would have kept meowing if I didn't let him out, so. It's funny, he'll come in my room, nap here all day, and he like only leaves to eat or drink He's probably going out there to harass my mom for a snack right now. That's probably what he's doing. Yeah, A Beautiful Mind. It's fantastic. I wouldn't say it's my favorite movie, but as far as mental health movies of the ones I've seen so far, I think it gives great representation and it's inspiring. At least I found it to be particularly inspiring. You probably have this better in Norway, or maybe I'm assuming a little too much, but medical transportation, even though I live in a state where we have better services than many other states, it's still not perfect. And medical transportation can at times be unreliable. So, like recently, when I was doing my partial hospital program, there's a bus called the Elder Bus, which is for either elderly or people with disabilities. And for most days of the program, it picked me up without fail, on time, every time. There was one time where it just straight up left me stranded at the hospital. I was outside 10 minutes before my pickup time. I waited 30 minutes and still didn't get picked up. So I called the dispatcher for Elder Bus and they told me that, oh, they're already on the highway. They were outside and didn't see you. I'm like, didn't see me. I was right where I always get picked up. And so I got stranded at the hospital. I had to pay like, no, $17. $17 Uber ride to get home, which was unfortunate. It sucks, but do what you got to do, right? Ooh. I think I'm going to hop off, everybody, just because I don't want to be too late to my friend who's waiting for me to play video games with him. But I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today. It means a lot that you stopped into the stream and chatted with me, said hello. Cell says we get a taxi card where we only pay a very small fee. Sooner can basically use taxi for free. Oh, okay. Lucky. No. No, I'll say the transportation, like I said, it was reliable most days, but that one time I got stranded at the hospital was just like, really? It's so frustrating. Yeah, I'm going to be logging off, everybody. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Bucel. Thank you, Kenny, if you're still here. LV. Who else was in chat here? And Yana Bands. Thank you, everyone who chatted. Thank you, everyone who tuned in. Appreciate each and every one of you. And I hope you have a wonderful Christmas tomorrow. Peace, love, light, and tranquility to all.